the rig, this display rig, the Scholten display rig, where we have a code 0 sail out of spinnaker cloth with the cable in the luff, and the advantage there, you can just furl it anytime, anywhere with 1 or 2 people. The downside is you can't run square with it. Then Ian will show the other spinnaker on the other rig, and that's much talked about top-down furling, and that's quite contentious because it's a sail where the helmsman has a very narrow angle of steering to make sure it's filled but not loaded. So Ian will unfurl that. And you may have seen those sails with the cable external of the sail. The advantage of that way is any old asymmetric or MPS. But as I alluded to before, the disadvantage is that furling the sail can be a complete headache, and if you do it wrong, basically that's it for the day. You're going to go to the loft and unplug it. So even though we sell them, I've had them on my yacht, my Stewie 34, if it's a small boat, you just pull it through the letterbox, and if it's a big boat, you could go for this, or you go for your snuffer. So Barney, what's your opinion on all of that?
One thing we ended up doing to solve that issue was put a bigger furling drum on, so we had more power and keep more load in the sail. And that really did help, and we upgraded from a very average type of cable to an expensive cable that every time we turn the drum, an old, like a cheaper type cable would spin about 20 times before the head would start furling, but a very high-end cable from Future Fibres, we'd turn the drum about 4 or 5 times and the sails would start rolling. So we did solve the issue in the end, but it took a lot of time and effort, and we had many of those situations. What you see now with the sail wrapped up, and it also can get wrapped around itself, and as you said, the whole thing's got to go back to the sail loft and get unfurled. But obviously the code 0 type system, and you can get a purpose-built code 0 as well that will get sail down to like 135, 140 degrees true wind angle. So they're not that is a foolproof system, as we all know, and a very good option, I guess.
Yeah. So we're here today talking about making sailing easy. So it's not all about the ultimate VMG that we're talking about here, it's make it easy. So touching on Barney's experience with short-handed sailing, we on the J99, because I've spoken to Barney a lot leading into our preparation, because with all your experience in the Melbourne to Hobart, asking questions, and we ended up putting a Martin breaker on our tack line. So a Martin breaker is where you release your tack line on your sail and it automatically releases from the snap shackle. And the big benefit of that is that you can't scoop the water of the sail between your tack and your halyard. Because if you drop it and your tack is still attached and it happens to touch the water, well, it's an ordeal. Whereas if the tack is released, it will just drag back, but it's not catching water, it just falls on top of the water. And a lot of the racing code asymmetric spinnakers, they, with the rule, allow ginormous luffs and huge areas, so it's going to touch the water for sure. And that's okay if the Martin breaker works. So the Martin breaker is it's a continuous bit of high strength Dynex with a snap shackle on it. And when you attach your tack to your tack line, you attach this Martin breaker to a little Dynex loop that goes through your snap shackle. So that loads up, it releases the snap shackle. And it will only load up, will only break maybe this far off the bowsprit. Okay. So we will then showcase the self-tacking jib. So I've fussed over this rig to show the ultimate easy way to go sailing. So a a jib with full length batten, so you don't lose too much sail area, even though it's self-tacking. And then the mainsail with vertical battens that is completely okay with Selden mast. They encourage it, they've designed the rig to make that work, and we supply fittings to make that work. We've got carbon battens, we've got stainless steel small fittings and joiners, and what you see there is becoming more and more commonplace. And so the idea with in-mast furling, the wind is horizontal, so you pull the sail against the wind. So theoretically that makes a lot of sense. Also, your luff to boom E measurement is typically 2.5 to 1, so 10 turns on your luff is a lot more reefing than 10 turns on your boom or a slab reef. With this system you can infinitely trim your two sails, so you get rid of weather helm and heel to go make sailing easy. And we are a little bit behind, like you're getting more boats being sold with in-mast furling, but in Australia we've probably seen quite a few issues with the systems over the years, and that's fair enough. But it's here to stay, and if you follow the rules, you can have all that, and it can go all the way to hydraulic or electric. And a good sailing friend of mine, Rupert's father, David Henry, with abuse in 48, him and Louise, they've gone all the way to Europe and back, and he swears by it. All hydraulic, comes into the mooring area, press the buttons, and he's straight onto his gin and tonic. No boom covers, no lazy jacks. All right, moving on to the next rig is everything is much the same, except that it's, well, no, it's not. The jib is overlapping. That's an example of overlapping. And the mainsail is with a single line reef boom, where you get two reefs with the Selden system that bring reef 1 and reef 2 down as a factor of your boom length. It can't be anywhere. So if you are a blue water cruiser, you'll have a third reef, which is traditional, that can get rid of as much sail there as you want. So there, yeah. So you release your one line, and up she goes. So I'd just like to ask Barney now, what is it that owners can do to maintain their rigs? Because they're obviously getting more complicated if you choose it that way. So what should owners be doing to avoid any mishaps, please?
Oh, look, there's several components to the mast, or in fact there's hundreds, and you know, the main thing that I see when we have to pull a mast out of a boat, and we do this twice, 3 times a week sometimes, is that you can tell that they haven't been washed. It's the most simple basic function you can do, is just put fresh water through all the ball bearings, the furling units, turnbuckles, all the luff cars, if you've got luff cars like that. Try and get fresh water into all the components that work. Also, if you have slides and things like that, try and regularly put silicone sprays on them. Obviously, when the mast is first put in, like I just pulled out a mast out of a 65-foot yacht today. We needed to bring a 50-ton crane in, and it was serviced by Clarkey in Sydney Rig, 12 years ago, and did not have one issue pulling any turnbuckle apart, any spreader tip apart, and it was purely put together properly from the start, and that's probably the key. So if you do get a yacht rigger and you own a boat, then make sure they actually put grease and all the proper lubricants onto the fittings before it goes back into the boat. It's absolutely crucial. So, but yeah, look, just cleaning. I think if you have the opportunity to go up a mast twice a year, even more regularly, if you've got a couple of young fit guys like Wakey down the back, send him up there. Right? So yeah, I mean, just to go up and inspect all the spreader roofs, all the spreader tips, Make sure none of the wires have got broken strands in them. Sometimes a halyard can get wrapped around a forestay, and this is quite a common issue for a furling jib, that if a spare halyard that's running loose gets tied up into the top of the furler, we quite often see the forestays half broken up the top end. That's a regular fix for us. We probably do 10 of them a year. So it really is important to, even though furling sounds like it's foolproof, it's a system that you need to look up while the sail's rolling and make sure nothing's tangled, make sure the ropes are all clear. Especially any free halyards that you've got, like a spare spinnaker halyard or a second jib halyard or whatever. It really, it's not just, oh, let's just furl the sail and, hope for the best. It is something that takes a bit of nous and just a little bit of care. And it's just, and then if all going well, the sail rolls up and away you go. But yeah, look, the biggest thing I see are that, just you can see the build-up of salt over the years, and no one's, half the fittings haven't seen fresh water in their life. So, and I think it goes a long way to looking after your boat. So.
Thank you. Okay, so back to you, Barney, about stay sails. So I can imagine that. This talk is very much also about where you are. You own your beautiful yacht. You're going to own it for 10 years, and you're going to do a proper checkup of what's available. How are we going to go across this ocean to make it easy? And part of that consideration will be the stay sail, which you won't have now on the bay because it's held tacking. But how are you going to? What are the options there to do that best? And Blake at the back will also have some thoughts about that with the latest structured luff sails, where all the load can be on the sail, not necessarily on all the cables. But first of all, Barney, what's your? You mentioned to me earlier on, there's quite a bit to it, both with the alterations to the yacht itself and the mast, etc.
So what Jan's talking about, can I call you a clogsy like I have done all my life?
Yeah, don't be clogsy.
Okay, that's all right. Okay, so we do this job a lot as well. We'll get a mast where they've got their big furling jib, and obviously that sail's out of its range in 20 knots, 25 knots, and the owners want to go and do Pacific cruising or go around and go over to New Zealand or do whatever, and they decide they want to put it in a forestay. It sounds simple, but it's not that easy. Like there's, first of all, you've got to go up the mast and put an attachment in to the mast wall. Sometimes that can't, like, depending what size of boat it is, and also whether it's carbon fibre or whatever. But basically, that can well be a mast out of the boat, which is a $5,000 or $8,000 exercise. And then you've got to do the work on the mast to put a take-off point in the mast, and also a sheave box for a halyard. Sometimes we put locks in there as well, so the sail gets locked up there. And then there's an incredible amount of engineering that goes into the boat on the deck to make, put paddock just to hold that sail. So it's not. It sounds simple, but there's, it's quite an expense. And I think if you can find a simpler solution, like we see on that first model, that's something if I was certainly to go cruising, that's what I'd be looking at for sure. If I didn't want to go racing my boat everywhere, but so there are options to modify masts. There's no doubt you can put two stays in there if you want, or completely re-rig a boom to have a different type of reefing system. But they're incredibly expensive because you're changing what was already there. Plus, a lot of these parts aren't that simple. I know we've fitted a few roller booms, and I think you can probably buy a mast for the same price as you can a roller boom these days, which certainly becomes quite costly. So
I just want to, Blake, can you add something to this, please, with what your suggestions are from a sailmaker's point of view?
The main thing with the staysails is really for longer cruising. What you're really trying to do is balance your boat out and make it faster on an easier angle. So when you are reaching and you want to go a bit quicker, you can go and put one of these things up. But as Barney said, there's quite an expense to get that extra bonus point. So, as what Clogsy's got here, what we always try to balance out is budget versus outcome, so that the person gets what they need. The simplest solution for a staysail will be the hanked jib scenario, and generally for race boats we go that option because they rarely use it. They don't need to stay on the boat permanently. So what we would tend to do is get a dynamic stay of some sort, strong enough to carry the load of the jib as it goes up, and just set it up with a basic halyard and a pad eye at the deck. That's the only real expense, is making sure that pad eye has a good fixed position, and then you just have some soft loops of some sort on it. And what we actually do is tension the stay with just a little kind of like a Cunningham system at the bottom. So we've got this great little system that we can sit the stay at the mast when it's needed, pull it forward and actually tension that little stay just for the interim to get the sail up, and then the sail takes the load. So in general, the cheapest option is if you can get your sail to take the load, then you don't need the extra bits and pieces around it as well to add expense. So the next option would obviously be, so the inner forestay being permanent is great but annoying. You've got to furl around it, and every time you tap you've got to furl your jib in. So generally the removable inner forestay is the simplest and cheapest option. And then the next level we've gone to is and a lot of sailmakers are starting to cotton onto it, is the structured luff jib setup. This enables you to not need a stay whatsoever, and all you need is enough structure in your mast to carry either a 2-to-1 at the top or a lock, and something in the deck to then tension it or fit it to. So if you have a 2-to-1 at the top, you have a pad eye on the bottom, and if you want to get more tension, you can also put a little lock at the bottom as well. And the structured luff scenario essentially puts the load into the sail, and the sail has a built-in structure to take that forestay load that you're carrying. So it's an incredibly efficient sail because essentially you're able to tighten the sail as tight as you need to, and it just locks in place. And it deloads a little bit in some ways on the overall pressure of the rig sideways, but doesn't change how much load's at the top and bottom, which is a bit of a farce that people have brought up. But yeah, the cheapest option can sometimes work really well for the cruising boats, and that's generally where we go, which is just that removable inner forestay.
Perfect. Well, I would like to add to that, on our J99 we had a structured luff added to our Code Zero, and it's night and day with the effectiveness of that sail. So as Blake was saying, you're making the luff, the sail strong enough to basically replace the forestay or the cable, because the cable is with Code Zero is designed to torque, but then to also not stretch. You're getting into your territory when it becomes quite an engineered piece of work. So we were always chasing our tail with letting the backstay, putting heaps of halyard on, tack line on, then tensioning it up with the backstay, and I made it up really stupidly flat, and we're still not really achieving what we wanted. So it wasn't the halyard, it wasn't the tack line, it was just the sail stretched. And that's what Blake was saying, that's now with that philosophy resolved. So it's a game changer, in my opinion. So short-handed sailing, we all know, we've all read a lot about it, and it's happening. And Jules, this guy that left a fellow laser sailor from Double Bay 2 years ago, asked if I wanted to take part of the journey, and talked to my wife and asked, well, what do you think? It's going to take a lot of time. And as usual, she said, yeah, if you do it properly. So we started over a year before the start of the Hobart race with discovering, that it doesn't work dropping a kite without a Martin breaker. And until the last week before the start, we were still fiddling with the rig to get it super tight, and without having a main that's too deep. And it was just quite a struggle to find a setting that you can use in 40 knots, but it's also bearable on light air. It's kind of an oxymoron. It can't happen. I'm more comfortable having a tight rig offshore than a fast, loose light air rig. So we, this whole talk about should it be or should not be part of the Tattersalls rules. So they've had the guys did a good job. They interviewed heaps of people and they've come up with a really good solution to accommodate the trend we are seeing with short-handed sailing. It will all change in years to come, but where we are now, they've done a great job. One thing that I have noticed that nobody is talking about the improved acceleration of a yacht that is sailed with 2 people. You're taking like a good 600 kilos out of the boat. And yeah, we found that just that in various light air winds, you just hold your own against 45 footers, no problems. And that led us to, with the sailmaker, decide, well, we don't need a main that is maximum size. So you see all these big boats these days with lots of sails in front of the mast, and it's all about trying to get rid of helm and to bring the center of effort down. Well, we did the same thing with a smaller main. We got rid of helm, so we'd be pretty useless in a wind with leeward with 6 guys hiking over the side. We'd be out the back door. But at 12 knots, we are overpowered. So why have a big main? So we have 3 reefs. We had to fight for that, and we were really good at reefing. On your own, we could reef, no problems whatsoever. Just walk forward, dump your main and mark, cutting them on, bang. And it didn't matter if it wasn't perfect, as long as you were quick back in the cockpit and stopped the sail from flapping. There's number 1, 2, and 3 rule in our boat: stop it from flapping. So if it's not perfect, you just worry about that after you've stopped it from flapping. Make sure your leech line is done. And those little things stop your leech from flapping. So there was one scenario where I was about to go off watch. I didn't have the right gear on. The jib leech was flapping. So I just had to grind my teeth and just do it, because I thought if I don't do it, all this effort for years training is done. If that jib breaks, because that number 4 we have got us through a wind range from 12 to 35 knots. And that took us a year to figure out. Another team may well say, well, we want a reefable jib. And it doesn't matter what you choose, but it takes a long time to establish all those nuances in your arsenal, so that you're confident that whatever hits you, you know what to do. You're not getting any anxiety of how we're going to solve this problem. So we would put a reef in the main real early, or with a kite up long, we put a reef in the main straight away, just to get rid of unnecessary damage or loads on things. You want to add something to this? Because yeah, that's right. I rang you up and asked about your experience with the race to Tassie, and you said that you put your autopilot on course. Can you tell me a bit more about that, rather than on a true wind angle? Or apparent wind angle?
Yeah, so look, Gonzi, I couldn't agree more with just the preparation and time on the water when you're sailing two-handed. You know, Jade and I spent countless days, hours, weeks just sorting out the simple reef system. How do we change the jib when we need to? Spinnakers and all the bits and pieces, just even eating and cooking, to be honest. And the more we sailed the boat, the more we just realised we had to simplify everything we could, because there was only 2 of us, and it's not that simple. In that particular Devonport race that we did, we actually did 300, but only because of the forecast, we had like 50 odd knots going across Bass Strait.
Plenty that night.
Yeah, and yeah, we managed to, we were quite comfortable with the boat. And then the breeze kicked in, so we had to put in 3 reefs in the mainsail, get rid of our big jib, go to a number 4, and then we finally had to, we had a system where our number 4 jib went onto hanks, and we could just squash that down on the deck and hoist a storm jib above that. So it was quite simple. So we actually still had our number 4 jib on the stay, but also you know, had the ability to put a storm jib on. And then yeah, it settled in for the night. It was going on dark when all that sort of happened, and had 3 reefs, 40 odd knots of wind, storm jib, and basically we realised that it was, the waves were so bad that the boat was finding it hard just to track. So we decided to just put the boat on a heading, and I could sit in the cockpit. I actually couldn't sit on the rail because of getting blown off by the waves. So I just sat with my back up against the inside of the cockpit and had the main sheet in my hand and a tip sheet, and just noticed the wind direction, and whatever the numbers said that, you know, the wind had shifted 10 degrees aft, I'd ease the sails, but the boats actually sail a very straight line. So we just, you know, put it on heading. But there are a number of options on how to sail. You know, you can sail to a true wind angle, you can sail to a apparent wind angle. But this particular race, because it was like 60, 70 true, wasn't it?
Yeah,
like
it was
really weird angle.
yeah. Very strong but reaching.
Yeah, it wasn't upwind. So
really sea state too.
So yeah, we mucked around with the steering, but then just found it easier to say, okay, you just steer at this point, and then I can just sit there and trim the sails, which also kept me awake, and just had the old cup of coffee come out the hatch every now and then, and that was it.
Yeah.
So there was one of us on deck the whole night, so it was pretty. So once again, it was all just simplifying the systems, simplifying what we had to do, and it ended up working out for us. So
Yeah, you won
yes,
the race.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so when we had our first night, we did well. Jules called us to tack out back onto starboard and went to the left ley line, and we had so much water running from the north to the south that even if we're heading was east, where our course made good, was still very favourable. And then the wind backed and we tacked and we started to ease sheets, and we saw people between us and the land struggling. And then you look at the maxis, they did the exact opposite. The winner of the race, Jackback, they did exactly the opposite. They didn't want to risk their rig out there, and they sailed on the shore. So they had a tactic to, whatever it takes, we can't lose this rig, they just, I think, just replaced something. And they had enough information to see a westerly come to rescue them from that position, and exactly what happened to them. So it's all about finishing. When you spend a year's practice, there's nothing worse than not finishing. You don't care if you've got to finish. Absolutely. It's nothing worse than not achieving that. And another thing I found fascinating is that I do a lot of twilight sailing on pure water, and it's the opposite of a steady wind. It's just hopelessly shifty. So we're going to Durban, and we were sailing into the evening from Storm Bay, and then the light went off, the wind turned off. And a bit the same as what you described. We just put it on course, and we just trimmed around it. And you could never steer to being on the wind, off the wind square. So I think I might have taken the purchase out of the main even, and we put the drifter up. Must have sail offshore sailing. Must have. So we'd be getting all excited. Oh, we've got wind. The drifter's looking horrible. The forestay is all lurid, and it looks terrible. Oh, we've got to put the light up. Put the light up? No. Back to 0 speed. Back up goes the drifter. Horrible, horrible. Well, we're going. Let's keep it up. Who cares? So I think Matt Allen said afterwards so he was worried, like, shit, this short-handed sailing, they're going to be a worry in the future. So you went really slow in the Durban as well, didn't you? So no, we actually didn't. We were just fine. So we were weighing nothing.
3 knots of breeze that night. We were with you. We crossed the finish line with you.
What were you on?
Melbourne to Hobart, faster forward to Sydney.
Yeah, right.
So we got to the line. So we were in the river at the same time. And we had about, I think we saw 5 knots for 3 minutes, and we saw an awful lot of 1 and 2 and 3 knots.
Yeah.
Like this the whole way on the track.
Yeah, so that's your twilight sailing comes in because you don't have a spinnaker. That's the last thing you want to put up a spinnaker there. Yeah, that was.
We dropped out as soon as we got into the river. We kind of went really light, but forward was the angle. So
yeah,
and then just try to find the breeze.
Yeah, so one side doesn't work. We'll work our way to the other side. Might take a while. And just try that side. Hopefully somebody opens a door.
You found it. You went out there and took off there.
Yeah. Yeah, and so the first night, I didn't know whether to cry or laugh. I just went downstairs and it was just bullshit. Just getting knocked around, but yeah, you had no choice. You just wanted to get it going. And luckily I bought the best wet weather gear known to man. Whatever it took, I just had the gear. So it was not cold ever. It was beautiful wet weather gear and 3 layers and the best life jacket, that was very comfortable with spin lock.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have a lip on your back, so it doesn't catch on anything. Easy to take on and off. And it's got all the gear on it. So when you go short-handed sailing, you just got to start. You've got to invest in that, in your own safety and comfort. There's no minimising there. So we had no breakages, except I think the vang came off the mast, so we put a screwdriver in that instead of a pin, and that leech line. And we had arguments about the food, the freeze dried. We had a Tassie brand and a New Zealand brand, and the Tassie brand was shit. So we had to sort of go 50-50, half bad, half the good. But that freeze dried stuff is awesome. You just whip it up in no time. And then oranges. That was my. You must have a bag of oranges, because when there's nothing else to eat, like you find it hard to hold firm food in. An orange takes a nice time to unpeel, so your mind is positive, and it gives you a bit of everything. And talking about positive, I have a Dutch ex-work colleague that loves Australian cricket, and Australian sport in general. It's very important, and he just loves how positive Australian cricketers are to each other in the microphone at each end. So we would always pump each other up. Oh, well, John's good tack, or Jules, that's an awesome meal, or nice hoist, or you packed that well. So, and then he said, yeah, really well, so I think you need some more practice. So you pack the next kite. Because you've got to do all that on your own. So you get like 8 minutes, I think, or 6 minutes is a personal PB, packing a kite. Because we were once, I'm not very good at all the lights on big boats, and we were heading towards, I don't know what it was, a fishing boat or a motorboat. And I've once in China caught a net with a cable with a yacht. So I am shit scared when I see a boat, I don't know what's towing. So we were perfectly on course, making course with the kite just smoking. There's a Jules, I don't know, I can't bear away, I just don't know what's behind. Let's get the kite off. Drop the kite, no big deal, jib up, always have a jib on deck, always have the 4 on the forestay. All with the kite, either hoisted or not, so if something happens you can just put it up. So we probably wasted an hour and 500 kilowatts of energy, but we didn't. In the end it was just a cruise boat, nothing behind it. So I might do my homework on what lights mean with a vertical with different colours to save us an hour next time. So after the race, you're all pumped and full of energy, and came home and said to my family, let's go and have for dinner. And a couple of days of adrenaline, and then I collapsed for 2 weeks. It took me 2 weeks to get back to normal. So, any questions from anybody on shorthanded sailing while we're here?
What did you change on the boat after you did the Hobart?
Beg your pardon?
What did you change on the boat after?
What would we?
Or would you, yeah?
Well, we're going to go for a symmetric kite for the Southport race. I think that the East Coast is kind of a big windward leeward race by and large. And so we've found a scenario where the rating is going to go up a smidgen. We're going to get a smaller kite, we're going to get a pole, we're going to keep the heavy air spinnaker, which is smaller than a big one, so we're going to flick the big ASO, and we'll go symmetric and give that a shot. So we practiced it once in 5 knots, so that proved pretty easy. And we'll see what it's like in 20 knots jarring. But we'll have a brace and a sheet. So the technique will be, the helmsman, so you get the trimmer, will stand there with both the sheet and the lazy sheet, say you starboard jibe. So the helmsman will brace back on the primary, and then I think the crew will actually take over, going back on starboard winch, bringing the sail square. I need to get out of there, because if I lean forward and get the winch handle out and the mate comes across, I'm going to get injured. So I'm thinking at night, how am I going to do this? So I think we'll get it very square. I'll get out of the way when I'm steering, and he'll worry about rotating the kite, like a foot off, foot on, and I'll worry about steering the perfect course. That will be my only concern. I won't care about the main, it will come when it comes. But I think my job, if I'm the helmsman, is to pick the wave and pick the exit out of the jibe, and it should be fine. We'll see, but that kite is light, so we won't use it in 25 knots, it will blow up. We'll use that kite. Go back to being conservative. So we want to be aggressive when it's light, and when it's blowing, we want to go conservative. Yeah, put reefs in and all that. Yep.
Jan, do you furl that in that heavier weather?
Which
or
one?
do you, the AC?
No,
You
we
jibe it? Just the
yeah,
two?
jibe it.
Yeah, you don't furl it and then jibe?
No, we can't furl. We won't furl. We've decided the Martin breaker is our go-to. So when we're sailing along, must have the lazy sheet run around through the letterbox onto a winch.
Right.
So we're not on the end of the lazy sheet. So if something happens, you blow the tack, the heli goes over the back of the boat,
Yeah.
and there's one turn on the winch. There's enough friction on that heli that the helmsman can hang on to it, open the clutch.
Yeah.
So the guy in the hatch opens the jammer of the tack, and he just pulls it in, and the helmsman just feeds the heli to the crew. But yeah, if I'm on my own, which is your concern, I don't have that person to put it in. What am I going to do? I've got no idea. I hope it won't happen. Don't get off the boat. So I have a sore thumb of clicking on and off. I would not go on deck without my harness on, without being tethered on. It's just like, no, just don't do it in case something happens. Thank you.
Yeah.